Renji's POV. I never wanted to be noticed. I liked my dorm life orderly. Quiet floors, predictable routines, and no surprises. Unfortunately, surprises had a way of choosing me. And this one came on the back of a broken leg, a sprained wrist, and a smirk that could make a saint swear. Kaito Moriyama, the infamous pervert of our school. The guy who somehow made every hallway he walked through feel like a circus and left a trail of exasperated teachers and blushing students behind him. He was notorious for shameless flirting, crude jokes, and somehow, against all reason, he was my roommate. And now, of course, he was lying in the infirmary, injured, smirking like he wasn't injured. It happened during gym class, of course. Kaido had this brilliant idea to show everyone how it's really done on the parallel bars, jumping, twisting, flopping in his usual over-the-top style. Half the dorm cheered, half groaned, and I was somewhere in the middle, wishing he'd just stay put. One wild flip later, and Kaito misjudged his landing completely. There was a sickening crack of bone, a loud yelp, and then he sprawled on the mat, one leg bent awkwardly, wrist bent at a weird angle. His grin faltered, just for a second, before he waved weakly like it was no big deal. By the time the nurse and dorm manager arrived, he was limping painfully and moaning, "I'm fine, totally fine. Just a scratch. Yeah, sure, a fractured leg and sprained wrist, and that, of course, is how I ended up being voluntold to take care of him." The dorm manager's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Since you share a room with him," he said, glancing pointedly at me, "you'll be responsible for his care until he recovers. Think of it as community service." I gawked. I opened my mouth. Words failed me. This had to be a joke. "But," I began, only to be interrupted. Kaito lifted his head slightly on the pillow, his grin widening. "Oh, I don't mind at all. If anyone's gonna tuck me in at night," he said, stretching dramatically, "it better be you." I nearly dropped my clipboard. I blinked. "Excuse me? Did you just—" "I said what I said," Kaito replied, flopping back onto the pillow with a flourish. "And trust me, I can be very persuasive." It was official. My life had been ruined. Helping him settle into bed was my first test. He insisted on demonstrating the correct way to lie down, which involved grabbing my wrist and forcing me to adjust his leg. "Gentler," he said, his tone teasing but sharp enough to make my cheeks burn. "Or I might start thinking you enjoy manhandling me." I snorted through gritted teeth. "I do not enjoy this," I muttered, though my hands betrayed me with the tiniest hesitation as I adjusted the cast. "You're lying," he said with a grin, propping himself up slightly. "See?" "The corners of your mouth twitch. Admit it." I huffed and focused on the task, silently cursing dorm life, injury policies, and the fact that my body apparently enjoyed the awkward closeness. Flashback 1 week earlier. It wasn't like Kaido and I had never interacted before. A week ago, during the morning sports match, he'd been sprawled across the field, laughing at me while I tried not to fall over running drills. "Hey, Takahashi, your form's so stiff, it's art," he'd called out, making me scowl. But there had been a moment where our eyes met, just for a heartbeat, and I didn't look away. I hate that I remembered that moment now, or the time in class, a few days before that, when he'd leaned back in his chair and whispered something meant to distract me during a group project. Something innocuous, something flirtatious, and I had smiled. Hated myself for smiling, but it had been there, that feeling. Chemistry, maybe, or just my imagination playing tricks. And now, lying in front of me with a broken leg, Kaito was practically daring me to notice it again. "Dinner," the infirmary nurse announced, handing him a tray. I picked it up, attempting to balance food, professionalism, and pride. Kaito immediately grabbed my wrist. "Ah, that's it! Perfect!" he cooed dramatically, leaning closer than necessary. "You have a talent, Renji. Did anyone ever tell you you have a talent for being a good husband?" "Stop it," I snapped, heat rising. "Just sit still and eat." "Boring," he muttered, but his smirk betrayed that he was enjoying every second. Even at that moment, I caught a flicker of something in his eyes. Pain, frustration, vulnerability. I told myself I was imagining it, but I didn't look away. Later that night, I was adjusting the pillows again. Kaito insisted on being comfortable when he sighed dramatically. "You know," he said, letting his hand graze mine slightly, "you're kind of, efficient." In a scary way? "Stop trying to flirt," I muttered, pulling back. "You're..." Flustered, his grin was victorious. "I knew it." I groaned, tugging the blankets over his shoulders. Somehow the room was simultaneously too small and too loud with his presence. And yet, in moments when he wasn't teasing, I found myself noticing the little things. The way he frowned slightly when he shifted in pain. The way his brow furrowed was almost unconsciously. There was more to him. Always had been. The next day, the teasing continued. I brought him breakfast and caught him smirking at the way I fumbled with the tray. "Clumsy, aren't you?" he said, and I shot him a glare. "I've been managing just fine until now," I said, "and don't call me clumsy." "You're adorable," he said, taking a bite of toast and winking. "See? That's me, appreciating your, quirks." My cheeks heated. Why was he so good at this? By evening, I noticed something else. The grin he wore wasn't always a shield. When he winced while shifting, when his leg spasmed slightly as he tried to reach for a glass, the cocky mask faltered for a heartbeat. I hesitated, kneeling beside him to help, and saw a flash of pain, real pain. "Sorry," I said, voice softer than I intended, adjusting his pillows. "You're different," he muttered, not meeting my eyes. "Most people just laugh at me." "You don't," I froze, unsure how to respond. My mind raced, heart thumping. Why was this hitting me so hard? That night, his leg spasmed badly, and I stayed up. Medicine, ice packs, blankets, repositioning. All the while, I tried not to stare too much at him as he curled slightly, groaning in discomfort. "You're the only one who doesn't look at me like I'm a joke," he whispered, barely audible. I swallowed. And that's the truth. My chest felt tight. He wasn't joking. The bravado, the flirting, the antics, it was a mask. And beneath it, he was just a kid who hurt. The next day, comedy returned. Kaito flopped dramatically when I reminded him to stay seated while eating, clutching my arm as if I were a lifeline. "See?" he said, gasping theatrically. "You're my savior! My hero! My personal butler/guardian angel! I am not your butler!" I barked, trying to maneuver his tray away from him. "Adorable," he muttered under his breath, and I knew I'd just internally flinched at the word. By the end of the day, I caught myself lingering when he laughed, when he pouted for attention, when he seemed almost vulnerable. And the worst part? I hated that I liked it. I muttered to myself, a little breathless, "This is going to be a long week." And I knew it wasn't just the week, it was the everything that was about to get messy. 2 days later. 2 days had passed since I started taking care of Kaito, and the dorm had already begun to feel like a minefield. The first hint that the gossip mill had turned on me came when I was carrying his breakfast tray down the hall. My back stiffened the instant I saw Miki Sato leaning against the wall, phone in hand, eyes sharp as knives. "Renji! Takahashi!" he said slowly, his tone practically dripping with suspicion. "Helping the infamous pervert again? Interesting." I froze mid-step. I'm just doing my duty." My voice came out far too high, far too defensive. His smirk was a punch in the gut. "Sure, duty. Everyone's watching. You and Kaito make a cute pair, don't you?" I blinked. "Cute pair? What the hell are you talking about?" Mickey waved his hand airily, already taking pictures with his phone. "Oh, nothing. Just you carrying his tray like some doting boyfriend. Nothing suspicious, right?" I didn't wait for his response. I bolted down the hall, tray in hand, muttering curses under my breath. How can I forget? Being a good flirt, Kaito has a tendency to be in the gossip for being with different boys. And now I was dragged into that gossip topic. And of course, Kaito was delighted. "Renji!" Kaito teased, his voice sweetly mocking, as soon as I entered the infirmary. "Everyone's staring!" "You're glowing with love or lust?" Hard to tell, I groaned. "I'm glowing with irritation." "And you're impossible. Impossibly adorable, you mean?" He leaned back against the pillows with a grin that made my chest tighten. The whispers began immediately. By lunch, half the dorm was snickering behind their hands or peeking at us from tables across the common room. Every time I walked, tidying the infirmary, Kaito would lean toward me, pretending to swoon, dramatically caressing my arms or waist. My ears burned. My body betrayed me. My pulse was racing every time his fingers brushed mine by accident. Or not so accidentally. "Whoa, careful there," I muttered one time as he stumbled slightly getting up from the wheelchair. Instinctively, I caught him under the arm. Our hands pressed together for a heartbeat longer than necessary. His eyes flickered up to mine, dark and unreadable for a second, before he smirked. "You always worry so much," he teased. "It's kinda hot." I choked on my reply. "Don't say things like that." My brain was screaming he's injured, focus, but every word of his felt like a spark on my nerves. Even the dorm manager wasn't spared. When he caught me carrying Kaito's tray back to the infirmary, he gave me a sharp look. "You can stop taking care of Kaito if you want, Renji. I guess he's doing fine and can use a little movement." Oh no, I am still too fragile. Kaito feigned pain before he discreetly winked at me. Fragile my ass. I wanted to scream. That night, the gossip hit a peak. Kaito leaned back on the bed, legs elevated, smiling lazily. "Did you hear? They're saying what was it? Lovers? Roommates in love?" I pressed my palms to my face. "They're idiots." Kaito reached out suddenly, grabbing my wrist, dragging my hand to rest near his chest. "Relax," he murmured, tone low. My body betrayed me instantly, chest tightening, pulse skyrocketing. "See? This is harmless. You can touch me a little." I yanked back, embarrassed beyond reason. No. "Relax, Renji," he whispered again, softer this time. His thumb brushed over my wrist in a way that made my stomach flip. What the hell is happening to me? Even simple tasks became fraught with tension. Feeding him became a minefield of accidental closeness. Every time he leaned forward to take a spoonful, he bumped his shoulder against mine, leaned on my chest slightly. Every time, my breath caught. Every time, he smiled that infuriatingly smug smile that somehow also made my knees weak. By the end of the day, I found myself replaying every accidental touch, every brush of hands, every whisper of his voice in my head. I hate that I like him. I hate that I like him so much. A day later. It started as any other day. I had been meticulously planning his recovery schedule, ice packs, elevation, stretches, and strict instructions not to move without support. Kaito, of course, thought otherwise. "I'm fine, Renji." "I don't need all that fuss," he said, trying to swing his leg over the side of the bed. "Don't even think about it," I snapped, lunging forward. "You'll re-injure yourself." He smirked, teasing, but I caught the flicker of frustration in his eyes. He wanted to be independent, but I knew his pride was masking fear. And then it happened. His arm slipped awkwardly, his cast jolting. He let out a sharp yelp, and my stomach dropped. "Kaito!" I shouted, rushing to steady him. "What did I just say about moving without support?" Shit! His voice cracked, part anger, part pain. "I didn't... Fuck! You're overreacting, Renji!" I grabbed him firmly by the shoulders, heart pounding, and glared. "Overreacting? You're reckless! Do you understand that?" He leaned into my hold, smirking, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, come on. It's not like you don't enjoy looking after me," he teased, masking a wince with humor. "You're impossible!" I shouted, but the words were laced with something else. Anger, yes, but also something hotter, harder to identify. Kaito flinched slightly as I tightened my hold to stabilize him, and our faces were inches apart. My chest hammered. I could feel his breath. He could feel mine. And then, God, how could this happen? Our lips brushed. Time froze. I froze. His smirk faltered into wide-eyed shock. My mind blanked completely. Oh fuck. Oh fuck. Oh fuck. He pulled back slightly, gripping my shoulders for balance. "Renji," he whispered, voice low, breathy, uncertain. I couldn't respond. My brain short-circuited. All I knew was the heat of his body against mine, the sharp pulse of my own arousal, the way his gaze searched mine with something vulnerable and daring all at once. I started, but my voice caught. "You're blushing," he said, a soft grin returning but quieter, intimate. "Cute when you're flustered." I groaned, burying my face in my hands. "I'm not. Stop! God, stop teasing me!" But he didn't stop. He leaned closer, murmuring, "I like seeing you like this. Makes me feel closer to you." I could feel the heat pooling low in my stomach, betraying every shred of my self-control. I'm supposed to be his caretaker. Supposed to be responsible. Supposed to be professional. But the professional had fled the moment our lips brushed. Desire and frustration had taken over, leaving me stiff, flustered, and dangerously aware of every inch of him pressed against me. I can't," I muttered, voice shaky. "This isn't... You're injured." "Exactly," he said softly, eyes darkening, lips near mine again. "I'm vulnerable. And I trust you trust." The word hit me harder than any slap. My heart thudded against my ribs, my pulse screaming. The way he said it, so open, so raw, made me want to drop every barrier I'd built around myself. Kaito shifted slightly, testing the waters, pressing a little closer. My hands automatically went to his shoulders, steadying him, fingers brushing along his arms and chest in a way that sent a jolt straight through me. "Renji," he whispered again, softer this time. "Don't pull away." I didn't. I couldn't. I leaned in, tentative, slow. Our lips met again, intentionally this time, fiery, desperate, questioning, exploring. The kiss was electric, messy, full of frustration and longing. I wanted to pull back, but every instinct, every pulse urged me forward. When we finally broke apart, just barely, he rested his forehead against mine, panting lightly. "You're hotter than I imagined," he murmured. I groaned, pressing a hand to my face, embarrassed beyond reason. "You're impossible," he smirked, leaning back slightly. "And you love it." I wanted to argue, but the truth was undeniable. Every nerve in my body was screaming for him. I had hated this, hated him, hated everything, and yet I couldn't stop the flutter of excitement in my chest. Chemistry, raw and messy, had finally exploded between us. That night, I left the infirmary for my dorm room with shaking hands and a head full of conflicting thoughts. Desire, anger, confusion, and a sense of dangerous anticipation tangled together. I hated him. I hated myself. And, God help me, I wanted more. Later that night. The room was dimly lit, with only the soft glow of the bedside lamp throwing shadows on Kaito's face. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding a cold pack in one hand, my other hand brushing a loose strand of hair from his forehead. The memory of our accidental kiss still burned in my chest, a mixture of shame and desire twisting me into knots. "Renji." Kaito's voice was soft, hesitant, completely different from the teasing tone he usually wore. My heart thudded. I looked up. "Yeah?" He shifted slightly, careful not to hurt his arm, and met my gaze with an intensity that made me forget to breathe. "Thanks. For tonight. I thought you wouldn't come back." I felt my face heat up. I just... Words failed me, like always around him. He tilted his head and smirked, but this one wasn't the mocking grin I'd been dreading. It was small, almost shy. "You're blushing," he murmured, teasing even now, though softer. "Cute when you're flustered." I groaned, pressing my palms to my face. "Stop! Stop it!" But he didn't stop. Instead, he leaned closer, letting me see the flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. "People usually don't take me seriously when I say such things," he said quietly. "Not like this." The confession hit me like a punch to the chest. I swallowed hard, trying to process the fact that the cocky, shameless flirt I'd been dodging all week had layers. Real layers. Hurt, loneliness, fear. And somehow, he trusted me enough to show them. "I don't know what to say," I admitted, voice low, almost lost in the shadows. He shrugged, biting his lip nervously. "Then don't say anything. Just sit here." The room fell silent, except for the occasional creak of the bed. I sat closer than I intended, careful not to invade his space, but Kaito's leg jostled against mine. I felt my body betray me, pulse racing, stomach twisting in a mix of frustration and want. "You know," he murmured, eyes tracing my jawline, "I wasn't always this way." I froze. This way? The pervert, the flirt, the idiot everyone laughs at. I wasn't always like that. He hesitated, glancing down at his hands. "I used to be playful, teasing, overly affectionate. But people, they misunderstood me, called me creepy. Teachers stopped listening. Friends drifted away. One stupid rumor of me chasing a girl till she creeped out in middle school branded me a pervert, and then followed me here in high school. And I just stopped fighting it. Became the mask everyone expected. And now people fear being called out their name with mine, as if I am not worthy of feelings." My chest tightened. I had glimpsed the cracks, the fleeting moments when his grin faltered, but hearing it out loud, raw and unfiltered, hit me hard. My own hands, which had been unconsciously stroking the blanket near his arm, stilled. "You hid behind jokes," I said softly. "All this time, you were scared of being invisible." He nodded slowly, eyes glossy. "Yeah, and you're the only one who doesn't treat me like a joke. That's why I wanted you close tonight." I felt a shiver run down my spine. Desire, empathy, and an unexplainable tenderness tangled together. But I didn't want to fall into his one-time vulnerability. Kaito was a flirt, and he knew how to use his charm. But I guess I was about to fall for this flirt. A week later. A week. That's how long it had been since Kaito dropped the mask and told me the truth. Since he'd looked at me, eyes raw and voice trembling, and admitted that the pervert everyone laughed at was just armor. And in that week, something in me cracked wide open. I'd always told myself I wanted nothing to do with him. His chaos, his teasing, his smirk that made my blood boil. But once you've seen someone bleed through their smile, it's impossible to look away. Our routine shifted. The sharp edges of our arguments softened into something else. Still heated, but undercut with a pulse I couldn't ignore. Like tonight. I was propped up at my desk, textbooks open, highlighting notes. My focus was fraying though, because across the room, Kaito had his headphones on, humming off key to whatever trashy playlist he was obsessed with. His leg was still in a cast, stretched out on the bed, but his fingers drummed against the mattress like he was drumming on stage. Renji. I didn't look up. "What? Your concentration face is kinda hot." My highlighter squeaked to a stop. "Shut up!" He laughed, low, lazy, like he'd gotten exactly what he wanted. I'd learned by now that denying him never worked. He lived to see me flustered. But then he pulled one earbud out, held it toward me. "Come here." I should have said no. I should have reminded him I had midterms and a reputation and no time for his antics. Instead, I sighed and got up, crossing the tiny room. He patted the spot beside him. I sat carefully on the edge of the bed, trying not to notice the warmth of his body so close to mine. He slid the earbud into my ear, our hands brushing. Electricity zinged straight up my arm. We sat there, shoulder to shoulder, sharing one stupid pair of earbuds. The music was some upbeat J-pop song, cheesy lyrics about wanting someone who sees through your lies. I swallowed hard. He was watching me, not the ceiling, not his phone, me. "You like it?" he asked. "It's fine," I muttered. He grinned like he'd won a prize. That was the thing. These little moments were becoming harder to brush off. The way he leaned closer, the way his laughter softened when it was just the two of us, the way his eyelids drooped when he pretended to be asleep, only for me to notice his breathing hitch when I tugged the blanket up around him. He knew. He had to know what he was doing to me, and yet for once, I didn't run. A few days later, it couldn't last. I should have known. By the weekend, the dorm was buzzing with a new rumor. Thanks to Mickey, of course. He'd seen me duck into our room late at night with Kaido's medicine, and by breakfast, he was whispering in the cafeteria that I was being the new flavor of the infamous pervert, Kaito New Flavor. I told myself I didn't care, but the looks people gave me, some mocking, some pitying, burned. I buried myself in books, tried to keep my head down. And then Haruto, Kaito's ex, returned. I remembered him from last year, tall, smug, with the kind of easy charm that set teachers on edge. He'd been suspended for inappropriate behavior, which made sense because the moment he spotted Kaido in the courtyard, he strolled right up and draped an arm over his shoulder. Well, well. My favorite plaything. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Kaido's laugh rang out, but I caught the flicker of unease in his eyes. "You again?" "Didn't think they'd let you back in." "Miss me?" Haruto purred. His gaze flicked to me, sharp and knowing. "Or have you found yourself a new entertainment?" He said the word like it was dirty. I walked away before I punched him. But it didn't stop. Haruto lingered, always nearby, making digs about how Renji, the golden boy, had fallen for the pervert. Kaito tried to laugh it off, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. And then, the breaking point. It was late, lights dimmed. I'd leaned down to adjust Kaito's blanket, and he grabbed my wrist. Our eyes locked. Slowly, painfully, I bent, and he met me halfway. The kiss was soft at first, tentative. His lips warm against mine, his breath shaky. For a moment, the world shrank to just that. And then, a camera flash. Haruto, standing in the doorway, grinning like he'd won. Well, well, isn't this sweet? My blood ran cold. By morning, the dorm was chaos. Gossip exploded. Half the students laughed behind their hands. The other half whispered that I'd ruined myself. The responsible one, the perfect one, brought down by a pervert. Kaito sat silent through it all, his smirk gone. That night, he wouldn't meet my eyes. "You should stop," he said finally, voice low. "Before you lose everything. I am anyway used to being the topic of gossip. But you don't." The words stabbed deeper than I expected. "You think I care about that?" I snapped. "You should!" He turned away. "You're not me, Renji. You can still be perfect. Don't. Throw it away for someone like me, a pervert, like everyone calls me. Someone like me." He was trying to protect me. I could see it in the way his shoulders shook, the way he dug his nails into his palm. But it felt like rejection all the same. And for the first time, I didn't know what to do. A few days later, the dorm common room was buzzing, the kind of chaos that made my teeth grind. Whispered gossip, snickers, and outright laughter filled the air, and I could feel every eye on us before I even entered. Haruto was perched on the arm of a couch, leaning back with that infuriatingly smug grin, clearly enjoying himself. Miki Sato was murmuring something into someone else's ear, his eyes glittering with malice. And Kaito. Kaido was sitting in the corner, his arm still in a cast, slouched over like he was trying to disappear, though I could see the tension in the set of his shoulders. I hated every second of it. The whispers that implied I'd fallen for the pervert. The sideways glances that measured me against some imaginary standard. I was sick of them. Sick of having to tiptoe around their judgment. Sick of the doubt creeping into my chest every time I saw Kaido shrink under someone else's gaze. And then, almost before I realized it, my legs were moving. My chest was pounding, but my resolve was sharper than it had ever been. I wouldn't let Kaito sacrifice himself for me. I stepped into the room, eyes locking on him even as heads turned. Enough. The word was louder than I meant it to be, but everyone froze. Even Haruto's smug grin faltered. Mickey stopped mid-whisper. A few students tilted their heads, confused. I ignored them all. I crossed the room, each step measured but deliberate. Kaito's eyes widened as I drew closer. His mouth opened, maybe to protest, maybe to tease, but I cut him off with a glance. I reached him, sliding my hand into his. His fingers twitched, almost like he wasn't sure if I'd be serious. But I squeezed, firmly. No teasing, no games. I don't care what anyone thinks, I said, my voice low but steady. I'm not ashamed. Not of you, not of this, not one of us. The dorm went silent. A few students gawked, mouths slightly open. The air hung heavy, waiting, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Kaido's eyes glistened. His lips parted, his breath hitched, and I realized he hadn't expected this. He'd braced himself for rejection, for ridicule, for me turning away under the weight of his so-called reputation. But I didn't. I couldn't. He blinked, then let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Renji. I didn't answer. I just pulled him a little closer, letting him feel my heartbeat, letting him know this wasn't a bluff. Kaito finally let himself relax, leaning just slightly into me. And then, in a gesture so small I almost missed it, he pressed his forehead to mine. I didn't think you'd ever say that, he whispered. Thought you'd never stop acting like a pervert long enough for me to get the point, I replied, voice softer than I intended. He chuckled, a sound that made the tension in the room melt just slightly. I guess I'm lucky you're stubborn then. I rolled my eyes, but I didn't let go of his hand. Don't push it. And for the first time in weeks, I could feel the weight lift. Not because the gossip had stopped, but because I wasn't hiding anymore. The next few days weren't perfect. Students whispered, some laughed, and Haruto's smirk never fully disappeared. He was instead suspended yet again for spreading my and Kaido's kiss like a rumor in the school. But the tension between Kaido and me shifted. Gone was the edge of fear, replaced by warmth, by familiarity, by something deeper than teasing. I found myself lingering longer when I passed him in the hallway, feeling the brush of his shoulder like electricity. He teased me still, yes, but now it carried an undercurrent of something soft, something that only I could feel. One evening, I was sitting at my desk, Kaito beside me, under the pretense of studying, though I knew he wasn't paying attention. He nudged my arm with his costed leg, smirking. You know, if you keep staring at me like that, I might just start thinking you like me, he murmured. I didn't look up. You've been thinking that for weeks. He laughed softly, then suddenly grew serious. Renji, thank you for standing up for me, even when everyone else didn't. I swallowed hard. Don't make me cry now, Moriyama. He leaned over, brushing his hair from my forehead, with a tenderness that made my chest tighten. I felt my defenses fall away completely. I love you, he whispered, almost shyly, though his eyes burned into mine. I froze, my heart hammering. Then, slowly, I leaned in, pressing my lips to his. This time, there was no hesitation, no accidental brush. Just heat and comfort, a promise that no one could touch. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine again. You're insane for risking your perfect image for me, he breathed. Probably. But it was worth it, I said, though my lips twitched into a small, genuine smile. Weeks passed. Kaito's cast came off, his movements returned to normal, and the rumors gradually died down. By the time the dorm manager stopped muttering under his breath about young idiots, we were laughing at him together, tangled up in blankets on his bed, sharing earbuds, and whispering about nothing that mattered to anyone else. The teasing never stopped. He still made jokes to get me flustered. I still rolled my eyes. But the chaos between us had changed. It was warm. It was ours. And most importantly, it was real. I caught him staring at me one evening, his smirk gentle, almost shy. "You're impossible," I muttered. "I know," he said, voice soft. "But you like it." And I couldn't deny it, not anymore. Not after everything. I'd been forced to care for a pervert, and I thought it would be torture. Instead, I had fallen for him. And for once, I wasn't ashamed of it. Epilogue 6 months later. 6 months. 6 months of stolen glances, whispered jokes, and quiet nights that belonged only to us. The dorm had mostly forgotten the scandal, or at least they pretended to, but Kaito and I didn't need anyone else's approval anymore. We still bickered like cats and dogs. He still smirked when I rolled my eyes. He still made inappropriate jokes just to see me blush. And honestly, I still hated that it worked every single time. Tonight, though, it was different. I was walking back to our shared room after a late study session, arms full of textbooks, when I saw him sprawled on the bed, leg propped up like he always did, headphones blasting some ridiculous pop song. "You know," I said, setting my bag down, "you could try being quiet for once." Some of us actually need sleep. Kaito tilted his head, a smirk tugging at his lips. "And missed the chance to watch you scowl." "Never," I groaned, shaking my head, but as I walked past, he reached out, tugging me down beside him. His leg pressed against mine, and for the 100th time, I felt my chest squeeze in a way I couldn't quite explain. "You've gotten good at this," he murmured, brushing a loose strand of hair from my face. "Taking care of me." Maybe too good, I blinked, caught off guard. "Taking care of you." He grinned, mischievous as ever. "Yeah, you tuck me in. You check on me when I'm pretending to sleep. You even sit through my terrible music," I swallowed, realizing he was right. I'd spent 6 months doing exactly that, and I'd loved every second. "You've changed me," he whispered, leaning closer, eyes glinting with something soft and dangerous at once. I rolled my eyes, though my lips twitched. "Don't get used to it, pervert." He laughed, low and satisfied, as I tucked the blanket around him one more time. And in that quiet, ridiculous dorm room, I realized just how far we'd come. From being forced to care for a pervert, to, loving him. The boy I never wanted to notice had stolen my routines, my patience, my heart, and now there was no way I was ever letting him go. And really, if I had to take care of a pervert, I couldn't think of a better one. The end ever catch feelings for someone you swore you couldn't stand at first? Thanks for watching. Subscribe to become part of our Rainbow Force, and consider joining our membership for early access and exclusive content. Stay wholesome.